Ask you all to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Folks, welcome to the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors November 1st preliminary budget discussions. As usual, asking everyone to silence all their cell phones and other devices. Also, that audience members may be audio or video recorded by third parties because this is, after all, a public meeting. I want to apologize to everyone for our late start. We did have an executive session discussing personnel issues, and it ran a little overboard, so thank you for hanging in there. With that, I'm going to start the discussion. I'm going to turn it over in direction to our able township manager, Mr. Lalonde.
Thank you.
For item number 4, which is going to be discussion of 2019 General Fund, Waste and Recycling Fund, Sewer Fund, Capital Reserve Fund, and Liquid Fuels Highway Aid Fund budget. But before we do that, I understand there might be an announcement from Mr. Ted Murphy from the Sewer Authority. Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Thank you. So come up, yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for indulging in the last minute request. Monday this week, on October 29th, we reached a final agreement with the Environmental Protection Agency and the Delaware Riverkeepers Network. Our lawsuit with them has been settled. That was filed with the federal court on October 30th, a few days ago. About an hour ago, I sent Mr. Lalonde a copy of that decision. It was published in the Federal Register earlier this fall. A couple of high points in there I just want to hit real quick. The action against the EPA started about 10 years ago, in 2008. EPA come out with incredibly low requirements to reduce the phosphorus, the total phosphorus, milligrams per liter. Won't go into the science and all of that, but at the time they came out, it was virtually impossible to reach. So there was an appeal that was filed with the Pennsylvania Environmental Hearing Board in 2008. That was eventually dismissed, and in September of 2012, the West Goshen Sewer Authority filed a lawsuit against the EPA in the Federal District Court in Philadelphia. The next year, 2013, the Delaware Riverkeepers Network enjoined the action and got involved. So some of the things that we've been doing at the plant are actually working right now. The enhanced chemical system, we got a grant for about $220,000 a few months ago. That's been put into effect. It's working. One of the first requirements that we're supposed to meet under the settlement agreement is to reduce the level of phosphorus to 0.8 milligrams per liter. We've achieved that with the enhanced system. One of the other things that was a really big item for the Delaware Riverkeepers Network was the riparian buffer that's going to go along the stream. So the grant that we just got, well, not the grant, but the portion of the funding from the Sunoco penalty, if you will, is going to be funding that. So they were very pleased with that. So we're able to reach an agreement over the next 4 years. We have to maintain the total phosphorus at 0.8 milligrams per liter, starting today, November 1st, 2018, up until December 1st, 2022. So over the next 4 years. After December 1st, 2022, we're supposed to have that phosphorus level down to 0.1 milligrams per liter. That's hard to achieve. But the COMAG system that we've investigated over the past couple of years, ran a pilot test through, should get us to that level. We have, I think it's 2.5 years to get that online, and then about 1.5 years to do the testing to make sure we get down to the right limit on that. And then starting in 2024, there's going to be various reporting requirements we have to meet. 2 times a year, we're going to have to submit status reports to the federal court showing our progress. So it's working. And the work that Mike and his crew are doing at the plant has really enabled us to make the achievements that we have right now. And just a reminder, these requirements to reduce these levels stem from the 1973 Clean Water Act. So it's federal law, it's a requirement. These are some of those unfunded mandates that we often hear about that have passed down. And it's taken a number of years to work its way through EPA and DEP. Normally DEP is supposed to set those levels. Because they didn't do that, the EPA stepped in 10 years ago and set a level. So that's where we are. And we're in the process now of looking at the final things that we need to do to get the COMEG system put in place. The design work is already being done. So we're well on our way to that. We were just waiting for this to be done and filed in order for us to finish that process. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. That settlement agreement is available. Casey has that and can forward that around. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Good.
Is that something that can be put on the website?
Sure, yeah, it's a great document, so absolutely.
Great, sorry. My things aren't working. Can I just ask you to thank your entire team on board, as well as Mike, bringing feedback to your staff. This is a really wonderful accomplishment, and I'm going to ask if we can give you a... These milestones we're celebrating and recognizing, and you guys have done a great job working towards these goals. So,
well, it's a big team effort, and it's taken everybody, and it's taken quite a while. It's taken 2.5 years to get these things underway. So thank you very much, and I will certainly pass word back on to all the sewer authority members. Mike's here, and without the great team that we have down there, we wouldn't be able to meet these goals. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay, so moving back to item number 4, discussion of the 2019 General Fund, Waste and Recycling Fund, Sewer Fund, Capital Reserve Fund, and Liquid Fuels Highway Aid Fund budgets. I think what we'll do, folks, is we'll go through, I'll ask the board members, I'll hold it right now, as far as how we'd like to proceed. Will we go through each item, example, general fund, and then allow questions, or does the board prefer that we go through all of these funds listed and then wait till the end for all questions?
I'd like to wait till the end.
For all of the
All
funds?
questions.
For all questions from public.
Okay, I have 2 people.
I'll do it for the end.
Okay, well, there's 3 right there. So that's what we'll do. We'll let Mr. Lalonde start the conversation and presentation of the funds and the proposed budget. Folks, this is a proposed budget. This isn't a final budget, so welcome any and all comments. With that said, Mr. Lalonde.
And just to preface, this is the, I think, 3rd or 4th time we've done it in this fashion. It's very informal. What you see in your documents is the raw request from our department heads, from me, that staff has made no changes to the budget. It's up to the board. It's the board's budget to make changes. So you're seeing every single, whether it's discretionary spending, personnel requests, everything went into the budget. So again, it's up to the board to make decisions on funding and whether we maintain the spending or cut. It's up to the board. So let's just start with I'm just going to read our 2019 key financial highlights. There is no proposed millage increase in the real estate tax for 2019. It's the 9th consecutive year with no tax increase. The last one was implemented in 2010, and the millage rate is proposed to stay at 2 mills. Sewer fees, as we've been discussing for many months, are proposed to increase to $105 a quarter for residential, a 61.5% increase. Trash fees are proposed to remain the same. We'll go into some detail later. We are facing incredible pressure from recycling, the Chinese market for our recycling goods, and Ms. Kovada's here. The recycling market is pretty much wrecked right now. The only thing that's getting any money is cardboard. Glass is worth nothing. Paper's worth little. Our plastic apparently is so dirty they don't want it in China for recycling, so we're having trouble getting rid of it. And the big number on the screen there, the general fund budget is currently proposing a just over $2.1 million deficit. Again, that's the raw request from the department heads and staff. We received our medical insurance premiums. They're increasing 1.5% this year, which is remarkable. We've had 0 or very small increases the last 5 or 6 years, due completely to the fact that we went to a high deductible plan, Jen, 4 years ago, 4 or 5? Yes, 2015. So we moved to a high deductible plan for our employees, which has caused our employees to shop more carefully for their health insurance, leading to a no or very small increases in our premium rates. Due to the additional personnel requests that we've received across the departments, the total salary and wage increase is 10.4%. That doesn't mean we're getting a 10.4% increase in our wages. That's the aggregate total of dollars. The additional personnel requests, two new police officers, weekend dispatch coverage, a new accountant in finance department, one finance intern, one GIS intern for administration and engineering. We're looking for a third mechanic in the streets roads department, two new laborers. A lot of that is based on the Woodland and Greystone project, because we're going to, 6 to 8 miles of new roads and everything else, all this stormwater coming with that new project. Sewer department, we're looking for a part-time lab technician to take up some slack with a possible retirement down there. Ms. Schwartz, you'll be interested to see we're proposing a 2% to start employee contribution to the pension. You've been asking for that for many years, with an enhancement on the other side to the benefit that will more than pay for the, will assist in paying for that enhancement. Employees for every year of service receive 1.5%. For every year of service, we're increasing that, proposing to 2%. We're thankfully done with the Sunoco litigation, so our legal fees should be reduced greatly next year. I think over the last time I checked, we spent about $750,000 in legal fees for Sunoco, so those generally are gone for next year. We have a transition to a digital township newsletter for next year. We're still going to have the option of residents to receive paper copies. We'll still have plenty of those available, but we're going to try and do more social media and digitizing our newsletter. In addition to it, it's always on the website, but actually, e-blast it out instead of mailing. Good Fellowship ambulance, we typically gave 8,000 or 6 or 8,000, 6,000.
6,000.
Typically 6,000 a year. They've been running at a deficit for several years. They have gone to a model that is similar to Westchester Fire, where they look at their service territory inside the township, residents, and came up with a more equitable way for us to pay for ambulance service. They cover half of our township, thereabouts. They're looking for essentially a $61,000 increase to $67,000. As we discussed, I think last meeting, Westchester Fire contract, we finally, after about 6 years, have a contract in hand. The board will be approving the ordinance to enact that at next month's meeting. For the past 5 or 6, maybe 7 years, we've been paying $240,000 a year for fire service from Westchester. They cover about 60% of the township, and it's increasing to $345,000 per year for the contract. We have moved capital expenditures, major capital across all departments are proposed to be moved and paid for out of the capital reserve fund for 2019. Historically, we paid for those capital purchases out of the general fund, out of each individual department's budget, kind of inflating the budget. So we're moving all those to capital reserve. And those major capital purchases increased from 2018 by $780,000. We have several projects that we're looking to complete next year from our comprehensive plan. We should be hopefully adopting that in March of next year. We did receive a $25,000 grant to offset that expenditure. There is we are still working on the Basin Road retrofit project that we will still be in the design stage next year, most likely. And PennDOT has been slow as molasses with the Route 3 adaptive signal project. They went out to bid late this summer. It's been awarded, but we will not have to pay our $110,000 contribution until the project's over. It should be done by June, July of next year. It's completely equipment. There's no paving or anything, so it's strictly equipment installation. So we'll owe that money at the end of the year. Oh, I'm sorry, probably June, July next year. As always, we always continue focusing on our delinquent sewer trash accounts throughout the township. And similar to several years ago, in order to pay for those capital projects, capital expenses that we've moved to capital reserve fund, we're recommending a $2 million transfer from general fund to capital reserve to fund those purchases. So we'll go into the all funds summary next. General fund, obviously you can see a significant deficit of $2.1 million. Sewer fund, given the new sewer rate, we have a surplus of $567,000. You can see the waste and recycling fund, again, that recycling issue with the recyclables and our increase in the trash contract for next year. We had about a $25,000 budgeted surplus for 18, and that's moved up to 196. Maybe for 2020, the board may consider a small increase in the trash rate, but obviously with the sewer rate going up, we didn't want to hit everybody at once. Capital reserve fund, with that $2 million transfer, we will have a surplus at the end of 2019 of just under $700,000 after all the expenses are paid out of capital reserve. And the state highway fund, we're looking at revenues of $727,000 this year. 100% of that money paid for our road paving program because the bids were so excellent. I've seen oil prices going down because of the China-U.S. strife with tariffs and everything else. But oil prices could spike for any reason, so that's always oil dependent. We'll see. Okay, that was quick. Any questions from the board right off the bat? Again, very informal discussion. Okay, just a general discussion about salaries and wages. Again, given the 5 new positions that are proposed, the net increase for general fund salaries is $720,000. Again, it's not a 10.8% increase for anybody, it's total dollars increased. Sewer fund salaries are proposed to increase $127,000, and waste and recycling salaries are increasing $2,500. Employee insurance, again, this is a function of the new people as opposed to an increase. We actually have a very small increase in the premium cost, but the overall dollar cost is going up 12.3% with an increase of $241,000. Sewer fund employee insurance is proposed to increase 9%, and waste and recycling a tiny bit at $299. The next chart is it's major expenditures in excess of $250,000. So any of our line items that are in excess of that number we list. Obviously salaries and overtime. Again, that 10.4% number with the new people across all the funds. And you can see the various insurance, Medicare, FICA. Employee insurance, again, because of the new people, is going up just under $300,000. The pension MMO for next year is going up 6.27%. Workers' comp coverage went down by $22,000. That's always good. A major area for roads and parks is materials. It's going down by almost $1 million. Sludge removal from the plant is going up a bit at $40,000. Legal and professional services, again, due to Sunoco and some other issues, it's being reduced by $111,000. A small increase in property and liability insurance, and utilities, they're going up just slightly. Contracted collection is for our trash collection cycles. It's going up by $45,000. That's an increase in the contract. Tipping fees, we've been pretty steady with trash. So tipping fees are what we pay the Lancaster landfill. They're stable at about $500,000. Facilities repair and maintenance is going up just a shade of 2%. No increase in sewer plant maintenance. Municipal complex, generator is the big project. That's budgeted at $450,000. We are receiving bids. Dave, is it not? Yeah, it's November 8th for the bids, and that's for the installation, electrical, and inspections.
Yes,
The generator itself is on CoStarz.
yes.
I thought it was like 116, something like that, 111.
Yeah,
Maybe.
it's in that area.
It's about a quarter of the budget. So as soon as we get that number, we will update the budget with that number for the bid. Volunteer fire contributions, obviously the Westchester Fire contract is in there for that bit of an increase. The rent to the authority is increasing. That is rent to the sewer authority to pay bills. That's going up obviously with the bond. And major capital equipment, last year's budget was just over $1 million. This year's budget, 2019, is just under $1.2 million for 17% increase. We're going through these pretty quick, so if there's any questions, just shout. Okay, next we're going to talk revenues. And you have a comparison between 18 and 19. Real estate taxes, just a tiny change, down $3,000 from last year. Transfer taxes, again, we always do these very conservatively. We have to, because we're going to look like dummies if we way overinflate legal commission. Transfer taxes, just a tiny decrease, excuse me. Earned income tax, we have seen, I think through September 30th, we're up about 6.7% if I saw the last report. It continues to grow nicely. The economy is doing extremely well, especially for us here. Licenses and permits, those are all our building permits. We've seen just explosive growth in that number over the years, and it's been dialed back just a little bit in expectations for next year. Fines and forfeitures, again, we usually budget about $175,000. It hasn't come in quite that high, so it's been reduced a little bit. Interest and rents going up just about $47,000. Intergovernmental revenue is up just by $1,800. And charges for services down by about $126,000. Miscellaneous revenue, anytime we sell police cars, any miscellaneous revenue, we plug that in there. We have a number of vehicles up for sale next year, old, that are going to be sold, so increased slightly. And again, the proposed, as of right now, that we have a budget deficit of approximately $2.1 million, with an ending fund balance in general fund of $10 million after the $2 million transfer. And just some highlights about general fund revenue specifically. General fund revenues are just, they're almost plateaued, just a small increase of $67,000 compared to 2018. And just moderate growth in earned income, local services taxes, that's it, LSD, and interest and rents. And again, negligible growth for intergovernmental revenue, miscellaneous revenue. And we're projecting slightly negative growth for real estate taxes, transfer taxes, permits, fines and forfeitures, and charges for service. And some notes have been added to the bottom. Decrease in real estate taxes is due from what we think will be a decrease in liens. And we've had certainly not a significant increase in interest rates, but interest rates are generally rising, so we're getting that result. We do see probably a decrease in building permits next year. We're kind of in that weird transitional period with the Woodlands. They may break ground on homes, spring, maybe, but considering they have to do most of the Orlov, the infrastructure work, those homes when they start to be built, we're going to be in kind of a weird transitional period for a while on that project, and that's the majority of our building permits for the next few years.
Next fall until the following.
I think so. That's
the way I would.
Yeah, and they propose 12 to 18 months to get the infrastructure done. Now, anybody who's driven past the site, it's torn up. They're really working hard. It's a lot of work to get done before they put them home. So.
The other thing I noticed on the earned income tax, for example, with was J&J
Yes.
and the Haynes Group.
Correct, correct.
And those are two major employers in the township.
Yeah, those are at least several hundred employees.
Yeah, and so we're doing well to hold even.
Right.
So I don't know when they'll be replaced.
Yeah, I know the Haynes Celestial Building at Fern Hill Road, it's on the market for about $11 million. There's, no one's approached the township yet about a use, but I expect when there's a buyer, we'll be approached with a use.
In that regard, just off, as just sort of an aside, we have that Copper Beach down there.
Yes, any subdivision of that land development of that property, I'm going to demand that be subdivided off and donated to the township.
Yeah, that's a witness.
It's a 300-year-old tree and it's got to be protected, so.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's the number one priority for that. Sure. Okay, general fund. Finance does a great job with expenditure summary by function. So essentially each department is called out here. Administration, we're looking at about an 8%, almost 9% decrease from 2018. Auditing and tax collection, excuse me, a $10,000 increase. Legal and engineering, again, because of Sunoco and some other things, we're seeing a small decrease. Buildings, just a $2,000 decrease in expenses. Police, we're seeing about a $400,000 increase. That's primarily due to the hiring of possibly two police officers, plus the other personnel issues that we're looking at. Fire protection, again, some of that is the contract, small increase there. Code enforcement, 86%, $86,000 increase. Planning and zoning, really no increase for next year. Public Works, a $96,000 decrease from 18. Recreation, about an $18,000 increase. Parks, got a less than a 6% increase. And we're proposing, if the board's so willing, maintaining the $20,000 contribution to Westchester Library for next year. And you can see the operating transfers, a bulk of that from next year is the $2 million transfer to capital reserve.
Casey?
Yes, sir.
The fire protection
Yes.
number, does that include GFAC, Good Fellowship?
That's, gee, does it include the 67 for, I'm not sure, because we historically had that in contributions. So did we keep that in contributions? I can't remember.
I honestly don't.
I don't think so. I think
I think
we
gone.
got
I
it.
think that was a one-time
Yeah.
contribution. I don't think there's anything in there for next year.
Right. Okay. We'll check on that for you.
Okay, thanks.
Other than the pass-through money, that's it.
Right. Oh, yeah,
That's
exactly.
all.
Right.
That's it.
Okay, then just some notes on the general fund expenditures. The 19 budget expenditures are proposed to increase by almost 15% as compared to 18. And again, that salary increase is dollars, not percent, at $720,000. And all employees get reviewed on an annual basis. So we discussed that a little bit in executive session. So. Employee insurance, again, that's a dollar increase, not a percent. Our increase was very low, but our net increase is 12.3% dollar-wise. We have a pension cost decrease per the MMO of $3,300 for next year. As I said before, we have a workers' compensation insurance decrease of $16,000. We have a small increase in tuition reimbursement program that we do for our employees. Net increase of $18,000. There's a conferences and training increase of 17% for next year. Insurances and bonding had a 47% decrease. That's not a lot of money. That's only $5,100. And again, legal services are proposed to decrease in 2018 due to Sunoco litigation being included for a net decrease of $54,000. We discussed the digital newsletter. is proposed for 19. We may see some small savings because we're going to outsource the publication of that to a company to digitize it and do social media for us as well. The general fund portion of road construction is proposed to increase by $35,000. Now, of course, that's always bid dependent. We could get another $700,000 bid, which would be fantastic. And then all of it could be paid out of liquid fuels. There's a small decrease in repairs and maintenance for the buildings. Volunteer fire contributions, again, based on the Westchester contract, are proposed with a net increase of $105,000 for next year.
What was it last year?
It's been $240,000. Essentially, I will publicly admit it, based on a verbal agreement. That was our last year of our last contract. It was $240. 7 years ago. It's been since Ernie McNeely was there.
And that's with Westchester.
Just Westchester Fire.
How about our annual contributions to our fire departments?
We don't have a
a fire department.
Goshen.
Goshen.
Oh, yeah.
Usually
Yeah.
contribute.
106, I think.
Yeah, 106.
Is the Goshen.
Yeah, they have such a good operation financially. They don't threaten every year. I get a call from Rick Smith from East Goshen. Hey, we want to talk fire, and they never talk to us. And they've been at 105 for gosh,
At least 10 years.
at least 10 years. I think before I came here.
We did, like last year, we get 100,000?
It's the same number, about 106,000.
Or is that what we're budgeting for?
Yeah.
The same?
There's been no requests.
Okay.
No requests at all from Goshen. And again, it's the Goshen Fair, and I mean, they do fantastic.
Make sure you support the Goshen.
Well, yes, we all do that.
Yeah.
Support.
I mean, Goshen has paid drivers, paid ambulance drivers. That is a huge revenue source for them as well. Again, they have not asked for us for an increase in years. Maybe 5-6 years ago, they were looking to expand their building. When you guys coming in, they never came in for a request, or even for a capital contribution. So, and
It's
again,
not listed here, but we're expecting
Yeah.
another 106.
yes, it's going to be the same number. We've not received.
It's in the budget.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah.
It's in the budget.
Yeah, yeah. Good fellowship. Our miscellaneous contributions increased, of course, the $61,000 with the new request. And they worked. They have proposed this similar, not the similar, a similar number, but a equitable distribution across their service area to all of their service municipalities. Some municipalities, I mean, we were only getting $6,000 forever. I mean, it's been probably 20 years. Other places have never given a dime to their ambulance corps, which is just remarkable. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can tell you that good GFAC, Good Fellowship, is running over 6,000 calls a year.
Yeah.
6,000 calls. They're running basically 6 units, 6 ambulances.
Right.
And now they're providing the medic service.
Yes.
If they bumped us another 10 or 20,000, I wouldn't complain.
No, for
Because
the
they're
amount
running
of
so
service
many
that we get,
calls.
I would not either, absolutely.
You know, we really make out very well because of the volunteers.
Absolutely. And again, major capital items proposed for 2019 are to be this year paid out of the capital reserve fund, where they should be paid out of, with a total net decrease of $839. And again, that transfer to capital reserve primarily for major capital expenditures of $2 million for next year. Okay, let's talk some sewer here. The proposed 2019 sewer fund budget, projects a budgetary surplus of approximately $567,000 with an ending fund balance of just under $5.5 million. Total revenues are proposed to increase 1.85 million over the 2018 budget, and it's obviously due to the new sewer rate going into effect for next year. And total expenditures are proposed to increase just over $1 million. That's primarily the new debt service on the new bond for us to pay. Some of the budget changes included inside the sewer fund. Again, it's not, nobody's getting 9% increase, it's a 9% net increase of salary, wages, dollars, for a net increase of $127,000. There's an employee insurance increase, net increase of $51,000. The pension MMO is going to increase for 2019 by $56,000. There's a small property liability insurance increase of $15,000. Due to the enhanced chemical project that was grant funded, there is an increase in materials of about $20,000 for next year. And sludge removal, does that include grit as well, Mike? Or?
It does not.
Oh, okay. Oh, darn. Okay. Okay. Sludge removal is going to increase by about $40,000 with all of the new equipment, right? I mean,
That's actually as a result of the enhanced chemical as well.
that's right. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we're going to actually get more sludge because the chemical
Right.
binds to the right. Okay, good. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. And the rent of the authority is increasing by $605 due to the new loan. They have two major capital items which will be paid for next year. A new tank truck, which is 1996 vintage. Is it? Or is it
94, I think.
94. That's it. Yeah. Okay. 1994 vintage and truck 309 replacement. We discussed these during the first budget meeting we had a couple weeks ago. Waste and recycling. I think people are generally overall pleased with our service. Lisa, would you suggest with Republic? Again, due to the recycling crunch right now, with we can't really get rid of material. I mean, we can get rid of materials, but we're paying to get rid of them at this point. And the small increase in the contract for next year, we're looking at a deficit of $196,000. At the end of 19, we'll have a fund balance, surplus of just over $2 million in fund reserve. Total revenues are proposed to increase $22,000, due primarily to interest. Interest is going up, and the performance grant, which we receive on an annual basis. And total expenditures, again, are to increase about just under $160,000 for those reasons I discussed. There's a total 3.5% salary increase. Again, it's a relatively small budget, so $2,500, and a very small employee insurance increase. And recyclable returns, that's a line item in the waste recycling budget. We just aren't seeing those in here. So we're going to see an increase in expenditures of $116,000 for next year. And we're going to be in the third year of the Republic contract. And I'll just say right now in public, we're allowed to have a 3-year bid project time period and then 2 one-year extensions. I would strongly suggest we extend for the 4th and the 5th year. We'll have to negotiate. We're allowed to negotiate for the 4th and 5th years for an increase, but with the service, we can't beat the service. So next year, the increase in the contract will be about $45,000. And we did install the 4 bus stop installations. We may want to look for, I noticed probably 6 or 8 more locations, Chris, that I think we should install. Yes, we're going to investigate with Republic, having them do the roadside cleaning in very specific areas, and increase the number of bus stop recycling and trash toters. Or not toters, but receptacles, I should say. Okay. State Highway Fund, I believe we've pretty much plateaued in the revenue per the new, well, not the new state law, but we're looking at, for 2019, revenues of just over $725,000. Now we are It's a $10,000 increase over 18. We're going to get to the point where we do plateau in that.
We're about there.
Yeah, I think we're about there. Because the state law, I don't know, was that 7 years ago, something like that?
Yeah.
Maybe 8. Yeah, that's true. It did increase the amount of money that we were getting for liquid fuels. It greatly helped our budget. Yes, sir.
When the Cherokee comes online, that's 8 or 9 miles.
Yes. As soon as we dedicate, we submit that to PennDOT,
Yeah.
so we will get our
You
allotment
get,
as soon as possible.
you get the appropriate increase.
Yes, correct. Absolutely.
How soon do you think that'll come in, Casey?
Well, if they, I would say 18 months, but then we can dedicate, they will offer it for dedication as soon as they're done. And then we have to submit all the paper to PennDOT, all the deeds of dedication, and then it's wrapped into usually the next year's budget. We don't get the money that year necessarily, but at least we get it on the books.
So it's 2 years time to
calculation.
fight.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but that's tied to the NIBS situation there. When they're doing the roads first,
Yes.
so we'll get those roads dedicated?
Yeah, they have to offer us dedication of the sanitary sewer lines, any public improvements. As with the NID, they have to spend that money within 3 years. It's a bond. They have to spend that money, again, 36 months. They claim they're going to start dedicating stuff to us in 12 to 18 months, including the park and everything else.
Okay.
We'll,
So at
again,
that
they're blazing up there, but
Yeah.
who knows? We'll see.
So at that point, though, we can then apply for the...
Yes,
for the
as
state
soon
loan.
as you approve the dedication at a meeting, we'll submit it to PennDOT to get that process started.
Okay.
And the next time we can be funded by them, we'll get the money. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure. We'll at least get it on the books with them. Okay, so for 2019, Public Works is proposing to pave 5.88 miles to keep up with our about every 18-year turnover of the road. And again, this is the most aggressive township in southeast PA for maintaining our streets. We've budgeted about $1 million for that, and again, this year, we did really well with bids. Yeah. And we're proposing essentially to spend all of our virtually all of our state highway money to that project for next year. And the excess we paid out of general fund as we have historically done. Now this year, again, we paid all of it out of highway aid, which is great, and it saved the general fund, so. Okay, capital reserve fund. We're projecting a budget surplus of $695,000 with an ending fund balance of approximately just under $5 million. And revenues from this fund obviously are the transfer from general fund for all department capital purchases, future capital purchases and debt service, and transfers from restricted parks fund for equipment and any grants that we get. Included in the budget proposals for 2019, again, we have that proposed $2 million transfer from general fund to fund those major capital expenses. About $80,000 expense for our continued work at the Basin retrofit project. That very slow PennDOT project for the Route 3 adaptive signals. That's that project where we're in conjunction with Westtown and East Goshen to link all the signals with adaptive signals. For many years we have put battery backups in the budget for traffic signals. So when they go out, they don't go out. We have about an 6 to 8 hour.
Depends on the intersection.
Yeah, that's right. If it's a very heavy, complex intersection, they don't last as long. And if we're in a long-term storm, then these guys get to go out with generators. But at least it gives us a cushion of time to get out there. Yes, sir.
I've also noticed that in certain of the intersections, they have a fold-up stop sign.
That's the last resort. That is the last resort. Because people don't know to stop. When lights go yellow, people do not know to stop anymore. I don't know where we lost that knowledge, but we go, yeah. Yes.
When they go completely out, then.
Yeah, then we flip them. Yeah. So it's battery backup, generator, and I'm not even, when was the last time we even flipped the signs, honestly? Because we always go out there with generators.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay, that's good. All right, so it's the last resort. We also put money in here for, every year for, if we get a complaint about a particular intersection that people perceive that the lights are not working correctly, it's taking way too long to get a green, we hire an engineer to do a traffic timing study. So we will get a couple of requests a year. The last one, I think, was West Town Road, maybe. I think that was kind of the last one. We had that changed about 4, 5, 6 months ago, and there was a slight hiccup in the, yeah, there was a slight hiccup in the signal timing, so we had that corrected. But it's all going to comply with the signal permit from PennDOT. So if the equipment starts to get a little hinky, they switch it back to where it should be. So that's why we do this. And if there's a recommended change, if traffic patterns have changed, then we apply to PennDOT for a traffic retiming permit to change the signal. Pixel Pike and where? Which one?
Farm Hill, bypass.
Well, that's being changed with Woodlands, so
That whole stretch.
those are all being redone with
Yeah,
Woodlands. So.
that'll happen.
Yeah. Yep. And again, that'll all happen within 18 months. That's part of the project. Okay. Okay.
So Casey, on the.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
The capital reserve fund.
Yes.
If we go back to the first page where it's showing all funds. and
Yes,
summary.
sure.
Just for clarification.
Yes. Yeah, okay, good.
Okay, so we see the capital reserve fund, beginning fund balance, $4,267,111. The revenue, is the $2 million included in that $3 million and change revenue? Okay, so where is the other $1,138,425 revenue coming from? Is that?
A transfer from the restricted parks
Oh,
account
yes.
to pay for the
Yes.
parks capital
Yes,
and some grant money
correct.
and a little bit of interest.
Right.
And the transfer from the general fund to pay for debt service.
Right, right. So the township has the fee in lieu of for open space. For projects like the reserve at West Goshen down here on Route 3, with the woodlands, even though we're getting 162 acres, that's kind of an outlier. A developer can pay the township $2,500 per home if they can't provide on-site recreation areas. And I'm not talking a top lot, I mean open space. So we are allowed to, by law, pay for Doreen's equipment, that capital equipment that is used to maintain parks. So we're talking mowers and anything over $5,000. So trucks, mowers, and any equipment. We can use that fee in lieu of money to pay for those. And we just started doing that 7 years ago. Yeah, that's true. Because we have to use that money within a certain number of years. So that is included in that number as well for revenue as a transfer.
Okay. So if we weren't doing the transfer, it would be beginning fund, $4,267,111.
Right.
And then it would be $1 million as far as the revenue,
Correct.
$1,138,425. The expenditures would stay the same.
Stay the same.
Proposed expenditures. Which, do you know what they are? I know you guys gave that to us earlier.
Yeah, that's 1.7 million of just capital equipment plus debt service
And the battery backups.
oh yes,
yeah.
the battery backups
The
and
signaling.
yeah, everything that we just went through.
Just
Yep,
mentioned.
exactly. Yep.
And so, once again, this is without the $2 million transfer. So that means the ending fund balance would be, without the transfer, $2,962,581.
Correct.
Okay, correct.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So we did, at our previous meeting, we did go over the items for 2019, reimbursed by that transfer from the general fund. And I'll just go through them again. We have 2 pool car replacements and a new vehicle for the township engineer, mostly for the woodlands, for $90,000 for the 3 vehicles. A 3D scanner to replace the current survey equipment that we have, and it's a 3D scanner. I understand the technology enough, but it's remarkable. That's $30,000. Municipal complex, we have some very large items, including the generator. We budgeted at $450,000, and again, we have bids coming in next Thursday. A lot of the equipment in these buildings is starting to get old. This building is 20 years old. All the security keypads are starting to fail because they're just old. So we're going to replace the security panel and the sign out front. All of the municipal complex items are a total of $600,000. For the police department, we have 3 interceptors and 1 interceptor truck. And I think, Chief, are we going with Explorers? Because
Yeah.
Ford stopped making their
Yes,
sedan.
Yeah, they stopped making the, what I call Taurus.
Taurus, yeah, which is a shame.
No, I say that.
Yeah.
The Ford Interceptor sedan is being discontinued. And so we've adopted the idea that an Explorer is an all-terrain vehicle and so forth. So, and the price difference was not remarkable. So we're probably heading towards a fleet of Ford Explorers, intercepting utilities.
Great, very good. So for police, $145,000. In the streets roads department, we have 2 truck replacements, a floor scrubber, floor sweeper, and a hydraulic iron worker. Thanks, Dave, for that explanation last meeting, for a total of $280,000. Major capital proposed for 19, reimbursed by transfer from that restricted parks fund. We have 5 mower replacements, 2 truck replacements, a message board for community park, and security cameras for the various township parks to ward on vandalism and to solve crime. We've had a few cases of serious crimes at our parks for a total of $440,000. Capital construction for the parks, we're looking to install a family bathroom at Community Park for $45,000. And again, that debt service reimbursed by transfer from the general fund of $567,000. Any questions? I went through it pretty quickly there. Go back to
Any questions from township supervisors? Only once. I think I have a few.
Put one in and give someone else an opportunity.
We discussed recently the implementation of rental inspection fees.
Yes.
Do we have any type of forecast that's worked into this budget for that?
We have not done that yet. We intend to. Bill Webb is working on, there aren't going to be any new expenses, to my knowledge, except for miscellaneous paper and office supplies, because we're using existing staff to do the inspections. We have about 2,000 rentals in West Goshen. So Bill and I and Derek are going to work on, just in the next few weeks, we need to get that done. It's not going to be much of a generator. The fees are, we've already set the fees, they're very low.
Right.
So it won't be much of an increase, but we will roll that into the budget, into the zoning and engineering department.
But you're not seeing great expenditures, you're
No,
seeing a
it's
slight increase.
just office supplies, mailing, that kind of stuff.
By law, I don't think we can do anything except charge what
Yeah,
the basic cost.
Yeah, the borough's been sued.
We're not supposed to make
Yeah,
money on
exactly.
it.
You
I just
can't-
want to make
you
sure
can't-
we're not.
We're not your revenue generator.
Yeah, it's not a revenue generator.
Exactly. Yeah, it's more to offset our costs for the town. And again, this is a proposed budget. We have several weeks to get this.
The other question I had, and we're doing, I guess it would be the best place to talk about the sewer fund.
Sure.
We were discussing during our debates on the sewer rates about rebates for senior citizens.
Certainly. Nothing like that is included in here. That would be just a direction from the board to investigate that. Is it 85%, Lisa? Do you recall? Do you know? 80% rebate for the trash rebate that we do on an annual basis. But the residents have to meet very strict criteria to get that rebate. It's certainly not arbitrary by any means. So if the board wants us to take a theoretical look at that to see what, based on, I mean, we can tell who gets that trash rebate and if they have sewer. So we can probably at least ballpark the number of people who would qualify.
Would that be fair, Jen? Do you think that would be
I thought we asked for that
It would be close.
when we were doing the
Yeah.
sewer increase.
Not that many people.
Well, we asked to look into it, but nothing's been done. And it's not, I'm sure it's going to affect the budget to some extent, so I'm just wondering.
I wouldn't think that much. I mean,
You're only talking about, I think, 153 people.
yeah, the list is not extensive,
Qualified for
so,
trash, something like that.
yeah, so it would be a very minor part of the expenditure.
Would you have a dollar
It's
amount?
about 46,000 off
Yeah.
the top of my head for the rebates,
Yeah, for trash
Full
rebates.
part.
trash
Yeah.
rebates.
And you would assume.
And, yeah, so at 105, but we can figure it out pretty quickly. You know,
Sorry,
I'm assuming $400 a year times 183, 40 grand, 50 grand.
That would be next December.
Yes, it would be a reimbursement, a rebate program. They would have, and, you know, they could use the same, we could roll that into the trash rebate, obviously if they have sewer.
So we still have 14 months.
Yes, we still have time to look at that.
We're only looking at around 50.
50, 60 grand, I mean,
Probably.
yeah, I mean, trash is $85 right now, so they get 80% back. So 105, they get about $80 back per quarter. So 320 a year times 180, 140. It's not a huge expenditure.
Lisa, what you got going over there?
Okay, it's,
All right, she's got it, good, let's hear it.
last year was just a little over 34,000.
Oh, God.
So it's 200, I think it's $272 per resident.
Right.
And there's, like Gene said, there's between 100 and 150. There really isn't a lot, and you have to be pretty low income.
Yeah.
Because you have
It would
to meet
be-
the property rent rebate, you have to be qualified for the property rent rebate to be able to get it, and a lot of people don't qualify for that.
It might be slightly higher because we're talking about a higher
Yeah.
rate.
It'd be 320 a year, about $100 more per year per
But it's,
person.
that's, okay, it's a ballpark to work in.
Be a very minor expense.
Yeah. Any questions from board members? Any questions from the audience? Dr. White, welcome you up to the stand here.
West Goshen Township. The sewer fund surplus,
Yes.
the 567, will that go right to the sewer authority's CRF?
No. This is sewer operating money, so any surplus we have in that account stays with the sewer operating fund. It's not the authority's money.
Okay, so the authority's CR, Ted, is Ted still here? Is that, how is the sewer authority CRF going to be done?
I'm sorry, zero.
Cap-
Well,
Is it going to be built into the rent that we pay to the sewer authority?
yes.
Or was,
Well, was that decided?
It was my understanding that surplus in the first couple of years would be carried over and used to support the deficits at later years as you went down the pipe. Is that correct?
I hear what you're saying now, I wasn't sure what you're
Yeah,
saying.
I think so too.
You mean the capital reserve fund for the sewer plan, that we calculated $105 on to build the capital reserve? I'm not sure I understand your question, so can you just ask or state more clearly for me?
so we're getting the rents from the new rate.
Yes.
It's going to be a surplus. The new rate is the debt service plus a little bit. The little bit is, I guess it was for the CRF? Not?
No, it's board's decision whether or not they want to transfer any money from the sewer fund operating into a sewer fund capital reserve, which is owned by the township, has nothing to do with the sewer authority.
Oh,
So it's a budgeting decision year to year.
okay. All right. Okay. The backup generator, I'm okay with, that's good. The new total station, can that be purchased in stages, or do we have to?
it's on a tripod.
Okay,
And it's co-stars, we get it on state contracts, so it's about 30% below list at least.
okay. Okay, and the salary raises, that's, I guess, a combination of merit raise, individual merit, and maybe longevity.
No, strictly salary.
Okay,
But again, that's net dollars, it's not, nobody's getting a 10% increase.
okay. All right, so it's an individual basis.
Casey, doesn't it also include new employees?
Yeah, a super majority of that is the 5 new employees across the
That
department.
that numerical figure that you see, Dr. White,
Yes.
is not, based on everybody's getting, as Casey said before, a 10% raise.
Right.
The idea is we have the police department asking for 2 new police officers, we have one fire asking for 2 new employees, and that's part of that numerical figure.
Mhm.
So it isn't raises.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, I see. So it's payroll addition.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Increase in payroll.
Payroll addition, not necessarily, okay. Let's see what else. Sorry. Got this all marked up. Okay, I agree with the increase to good fellowship. I'd always ask Ray for that, so that's good. And the newsletter, how that's being done is going to provide some savings, I think.
Just a little bit, not, the only way we would save money if we didn't do it, but we still want to communicate with the residents.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And we still are going to have a printing cost because we still want to have about 1,000. We're expecting about 1,000 of our normal residents. We're going to have an opt-in to receive it electronically. So if they still want to.
No, we're going to have an opt-in to receive it.
Paper,
Paper.
right, exactly.
Paper.
The other way.
We're
You gotta
starting
opt in
off
for
the
that.
basis that everybody's get
Exactly,
digital,
that's right, yeah.
which is why you get the savings in the first place.
Exactly. Right.
Part of the savings is mitigated by the fact that we are having a firm do this for us.
Mhm.
So there will be a savings through the less mailage that we're
Right.
mailing that we're putting out there, but that's mitigated by the fact that you're having a third party do this service for you, tied in with social media.
Mhm.
Okay, will there be ads?
It wasn't proposed at this point.
We have discussed it, but we haven't, that's not.
And we are aware, we contemplated it.
Yes.
I didn't hear.
We haven't discussed
Ads.
it.
Advertising.
I'll put an ad in. It's all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White. Anyone else?
I'm so excited. Really? I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear why. I like to get to see my true self because now, thank you. I mean, Mr. Lalonde made it clear. I mean, this is the board's budget. And I think this is
Always been the board's
it
budget.
has always been the
It's always
board's
been the board's
budget. And the 5 of you is like tonight, you're given an opportunity, I think that previous boards have not had the opportunity
I
to
completely
do.
disagree with you. We've
Oh,
done
okay.
this for years. We just didn't get any questions.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so I remember when Mr. Pielli was sworn in on that night, and I got up and I asked a bunch of questions, and he later came up and he said, "I'm glad you asked questions because as a board member, he learns from questions that citizens ask." So I'm not going to go through it line by line because I had an epiphany this afternoon, and I thought these are some really basic things. Elementary. We'll go back to Dr. White's comment about the surplus on the sewer fund. Based on the proposed surplus of $567,000 based off the new sewer rate increase, we obviously, I think, raised the proposed sewer rates last month too much. So we could amend the sewer rate increase because it's not going into effect till January 1st. My rough calculation is $25 per quarter. So if we instead increase the sewer rate to $80,
Doesn't pay the debt service.
Has to be
It
95.
has to be $95 minimum to pay the debt service, the new debt service. Your number doesn't-
but if we have a,
You'd be running a deficit every year. We can't do that. We shouldn't do that. Yeah, our credit rating would become B plus in about 10 seconds with Moody's. If we did that. That's not a
so
rational.
how do you go to the residents though and say sewer rate's increasing 60%, but we're going to have a surplus in the budget of $567,000 in addition to the $5 million in reserve fund?
Mhm.
So
We can't budget that year to year, Margie, because we have to maintain a surplus, a cash surplus.
what is the
Or else-
board, what is the township's policy for the
General fund is
surplus?
25% floor.
Okay,
If we
well,
go below
let's
that,
just
we
talk
have to
sewer
raise
fund.
taxes.
What is the?
We don't
what-
have one. The board has never established.
Let's do that. But, look, not tonight, but between now and November 26th, what does the finance department advise the board of what is an appropriate reserve balance in the sewer
Finance
fund?
department doesn't advise the board to do that. It's the board's discretion to do
I'd like to just maybe make one comment about your point of view in terms of how you're approaching us with respect to the specific issue of the surplus.
Okay.
The primary purpose of the $105 amount going forward is in order to ensure that in the future, we have enough money, at least for the next 10 years, based upon the $105 rate, to pay our obligations to run the plant, operate the plant, pay the salaries of the people who work at the plant, and most importantly, set aside enough capital in reserve to avoid any type of catastrophic issue that might come down the pike that we can't foresee today. So the whole reason we have to increase the rates for a reserve fund is because we've never had an adequate fund to cover the potential changes that are necessary. And so before we would even get to a point, Margie, of considering your recommendations, which I listened to, you know, I've told you that I listened to what you said, we as a board have yet to identify our own planning on how we would look at how the money that comes in and how it will be utilized going forward. And it's my intention to do that in collaboration with the sewer authority so that the township is not caught responsible for a catastrophic event. The issue with respect to specifically the pipes that we're dealing with is one of the major concerns initially. The summary that was put together at the meeting where we made our final presentation of what our recommendations were set out a bunch of different scenarios. So we have been considering lots of alternatives. This was a starting point for what needs to be done. And until some of the projections come forth and we start to see what's actually still necessary to do the work for the sewer plant, these need to stay in place as they are. Because as I pointed out at that meeting, that in the year 20, was the last summer that I had here, for the first 10 years, we were going to have enough money set aside, I think it was about $5 million, which would basically keep us at the same level we are right now, all the way through, so we always had that money available. And when and if there's an opportunity for us to make adjustments, I know the board will think about that. I know I will.
All right. Maybe I'm not understanding something, but I think it's simple math. And if we're having, if we
can't
have
build a reserve unless we keep
we
it
have
in
a
reserves.
$5 million reserve.
It's operating.
Those are operating
It's
costs.
not authority's money.
Pay utilities, pay salaries,
I
pay
get it.
chemicals.
Okay, all right. Sometimes I just have to print this stuff out because I think it and then I read it and I said, okay, I'll print it out so they see. Within a local government, the budget document is the most important policy document. And right now, this document, if it doesn't change a whole lot, the policy of this board is tax and spend. I don't know how else how you could argue that it's not just a tax and spend policy document. So, well, that's that. This is an article from New York talking about surpluses, because what's not in front of you tonight is the fact that we are estimated to have a 2.966, almost $3 million surplus of all funds at the end of 2018. $3 million surplus. Somebody's not budgeting revenues and expenses very accurately. So again, $3 million surplus.
I'm sorry, to stop you.
Okay.
When we get a check for $700,000 in our income from a QVC employee that trades in some stock options, how in the world are we supposed to forecast that? Could you please tell us that? Honestly, you've done this a few years in a row. I don't know how we don't have a crystal ball. We budget for what we know at the time we budget. That money comes in December or September of the following year after they adopt the budget. Again, how in the world can we forecast something extraordinary like that? We can't.
When you look at permits.
Right.
The hospital came in and said, we have a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
Well, we based our budget
We based
on a
our budget on
5-year
their plan.
They came in
1
1
year.
year and paid for all 5 years.
Right.
We had no idea that was going to happen. That was a huge increase. We have no idea when industrial parcels are going to sell or change ownership. And just change of ownership name, we get a transfer tax for that. We have no idea that's going to happen. So you have to budget conservatively on what you believe is going to happen and be happy if something additional
Extraordinary
comes in.
income comes in, exactly.
Okay, then we'll go back to the Government Financial Officers Association recommends having on hand the equivalent of 2 months of expenditures, about 17% of the budget in an operating or capital reserve. It used to, when I first started watching the budget, on the budget documents it always said the general fund reserve policy, the township policy, was 20% of revenues. Since I started questioning that, that has been taken away. We're at like 100% of, so.
In which fund?
In the general fund.
But that's a board decision whether or not they want to move money every year.
Right. So it's at these meetings that we get to decide that. So.
The board gets to decide that.
So what are you proposing about moving general funds? Are you?
Well, actually, what I'm proposing.
Let me finish the question.
Okay.
Are you in agreement with the $2 million transfer to the capital reserve in addition to what's already there from the general fund to the capital reserve?
I think it's premature to do that. I think the board's priority right now is to have set some policies that aren't in place. So just like with the sewer fund this year, set aside $300,000 for capital reserve. So the board, I believe, should consider saying every year we are going to separate line item in the general fund every year transfer to the capital reserve fund X amount of dollars, whether it's $1 million or $2 million.
We have done that historically for 30 years. We would send $100,000 over to capital.
Okay,
That was
then,
part of the budget.
but this year you're doing, so what's the policy? Why then are you doing $2 million this year when the policy is
To pay for
100,000?
those capital expenditures.
Well, maybe.
Out of capital, out of the general fund.
I think we should write, the board, the township should have a policy. What is the policy? And then
We have a
transfer.
policy, Margie, for fund balance. But it's a budget decision that the board has to, we discuss it almost every year.
I know, and that's why this.
But this is a new board.
Right.
These are raw numbers. This is their first opportunity to see this budget. They haven't made any decisions yet. So they're trying to absorb all this information So when we get to a preliminary budget, we have a lot more answers. These are just requests from the department heads. This is the first they've seen these numbers.
Right.
Okay, so they have not made any decisions at all. But they're aware that they can make decisions on this budget. That's their job.
Okay. Is it correct of me to say that there should be a line item in the general fund budget that should be the policy, that's the amount that's going to transfer every year?
Absolutely.
Because you don't want to
That's the
spend
board's
a dollar on that.
discretion.
Well,
If we receive,
If we could do that, but
Right.
there's no requirement.
and it would be an arbitrary policy on a year-to-year basis.
I mean, we
That's
have a
part of the
line
budget
item in
document.
our budget that says transfer to capital reserve.
Right.
And we do that
There
every
every
year.
year.
Sometimes all we transfer is
Is
the debt service.
right.
Yes.
Because the board made a decision
Not to transfer.
not
any
to
money.
transfer anything additional.
Exactly. And the board made a decision, what, 2-3 years ago?
So-
Hold on, to transfer $2
$2
million.
million,
About 3
we
years
moved
ago.
it.
Okay.
And that was moved over to capital.
So if in fact we have a roughly what's going to be, when I said a $3 million surplus, that's all funds, I believe I'm looking at about 1.7
Now, where are you looking?
million in the general fund. I had to take out last year's budget documents.
Okay.
So, so the end of year balance for the general fund in the budget for 2018 was budgeted to be 10.45 million.
Correct.
If you look at the paperwork in front of you, 2018 is what was the budget.
Which was adopted in December of
Right.
2017.
Okay, but right now, we're showing that the beginning fund balance, which would be the same as the ending fund balance, is 12.
No, no, no.
Wait,
You
wait.
can't compare budget to
No,
actual.
no,
When we
no.
do budgets, we base it on projected numbers,
Mhm.
and you come up with a fund balance. But when you finish the year, you have an actual fund balance.
Mhm.
So that's what you start the new year with,
Yes.
and project all your figures, revenue and expenses off your actual, not what you finished the prior year's budget numbers with.
Right.
Those unexpected income funds.
We get revenues into January that are accrued back to the previous year, into mid to late January, since we do accrual based.
So we're way ahead budget, though, on our revenues for 2018
I believe we are.
in the general fund. And I'm not holding you to it, but well over $1 million.
I really don't know,
Right.
actually, off the top of my head.
So, I mentioned this to you, I think, before you were even took your oath of office in an email. I think that we can reduce property taxes. A half might be a stretch, but 0.5, 0.5%.
Margie, we have a
You
$2
don't
million
want to do
deficit.
that, Margie. You want to be careful with your bond rating and all the decisions that are being made.
Absolutely.
You have to be careful about your bond rating.
Every single decision that's made by this board is scrutinized by our bond rating agency, and
You know, I get your general gist of responsible planning ahead, what we do with this money. I'm looking at it a little differently. I understand about how we should look forward and set parameters, but there's so many unknowns that do happen. One of the things that we've talked about daily, on and off, we just heard about a lawsuit being settled with the sewer authority and the DEP and EPA mandates that were unfunded. Another thing that you're well aware of is stormwater. When do we start planning from stormwater? Maybe we should take the money instead of property tax relief and use some of this money towards stormwater to help mitigate any cost to our taxpayers. So that's where I'm looking at with this $2 million budget, because I think we may have enough in the capital reserve fund as it is. But these are debates that we can have. I mean, I get where you're coming from, and I agree. We have to be responsible with the money we have. We don't want to be perceived, as you said, tax and spend.
Right, so in 2016, we transferred $2 million. So if we have enough surplus every 3 years to transfer $2 million, something's telling me we're taking too much from the taxpayers.
but it's not necessarily tax money that we're receiving. It's extraordinary income from building permits or permits, exactly.
So what do we do?
So there's no direct correlation between our.
But it all
budget-
goes,
Hold on. Margie, come on. We have a relatively flat real estate tax for the past, what, 8 years, at least?
Apparently not.
Yeah, well, not 10 years. Sorry,
Yeah, not
9, 10,
yet.
yeah, what's
We're not raising
2000?
them this year either.
Effective 2008, or 2010. We have a real estate tax that has been 2 mils since effective 2010. Our collections have not increased. It's relatively plateaued. So how do we take extraordinary building permit, and Doug, you see where I'm going, we take the $1 million I'm making fun of what the hospital gave us and give it back as a tax rebate to our taxpayers. It's not the same money by any means. That's why we carefully note where each revenue item comes from LST to earned income to building permits. So it's not apples to apples.
All right.
On the revenue side.
All right, citizens, I tried. Let's see. So, anyway, can the board come up with a policy about what the reserve balances should be for each fund? I think that'll go a long way. Not tonight, I mean, how do we go about how?
Public discussion and they
It's
sign
not
it off.
required for the general fund.
Yeah, that's true. By law, it's only required for general funds.
You know, I wonder if part of what your issue is the fact that, as Casey said, that we usually are very conservative about our income and our forecast, and that doesn't contemplate these unexpected, yet, as you mentioned, historic income sources that we get that we couldn't perceive of when we're doing a 2018 budget in 2017. How are we to know that we're going to have this transfer? So I don't know if it's safe or if it's even advisable, but it seems to me that part of the issue that you're having is that there's this projection that we're always very conservative with what we're going to earn, and we've always been beating that. We've always been coming out on top, doing much better than what we forecast. So I guess one could argue maybe we shouldn't be forecasting so conservatively so that we could, make
Right,
our
if you
budget
go
work.
back 3 years and do an
But
average of
on
3
the
years.
reverse, we get a little funky with our projections, and we look like dumbasses,
Right,
excuse
so
me.
it would
is
be
it better to err on the side
Absolutely.
of caution?
We look like morons.
Because God forbid if you made that
Exactly.
projection, it went the other way.
And we forecast the budget and based expenditures off of
Right.
those inflated revenues,
Yeah.
forget it.
So
I quit, I'll
I
run
see
away.
the argument there were maybe
Yeah,
some
no,
that you might be thinking of. I don't want to speak to you,
Yeah.
but I would be sort of hesitant to do that. I would be fearful that if we started becoming a little bit less conservative, we,
Yes,
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Purnell.
My turn?
Yes,
Yes,
please,
sir.
the accountancy being.
Margie, I can point you to the budgets of 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011.
Absolutely.
When the bottom fell out of the economy, we were still in a position to be able to maintain our tax rate without raising them, even though the expenses went up substantially and the revenues went down substantially. Even though we had that situation, because we had been conservative through, we were able to smooth, if you will, that big hiccup.
That rough patch.
And that hiccup is going to happen again. And historically, if you go back and study back into the 1800s, there's been a hiccup every so often. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter, but you always have that hiccup. And because we have been conservative, we've been able to smooth those hiccups. I have to give a lot of credit to the board preceding us, and it behooves us to maintain that reputation of being conservative and doing a good job, just a good job making the money go as far as it does, and still having enough that when the hiccup or the low end comes, that we can still handle.
Right.
That's really what that reserve is all about. It's proportional. It's not outrageous. It's really very, very reasonable considering what our past history is. If you go back 40 or 50 years, and I've lived in this township since 50, 60 years now.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of history in the old ordinance books downstairs of in the 60s, 70s, 80s, where
Yeah.
the township had zero money in the bank.
Yeah.
We had to take tax anticipation notes out with our banks to meet payroll, which we paid interest on. We took a loan essentially to meet payroll, pay insurance. A lot of tiny municipalities do it because they don't have any funds.
Yeah.
And we have the cushion to
And
pay our expenses.
what that group did at that time was they set certain zoning areas aside that were farmland at the
Yes.
time. They set them aside and zoned it for industrial dash commercial. And because of that, we have a very stable and solid base, a tax base.
I got it. And
That is why.
I have the history. You had mentioned to go back to look at 2009 through 2014, and I have that all right here. And in those years, we had, in the 8 million, it's all 8.8. In 2009, you're right, it all leveled out. By 2014, we had 8.7.
Yeah.
So for all those years,
Yeah.
that seemed plenty, that was conservative, and now we're looking at 10. Actually, September 30th, we had 14 million in our general fund.
We're fortunate that
So-
there was a big bump to the positive from QVC last year. Now, we may lose that.
Sure.
QVC just merged and laid off a bunch of people. They're closing down seconds of it. We don't know that. I don't know about you, but my crystal ball broke last week.
Right.
So my comment to you is we need to keep a fair
Okay.
bundle in there.
All right, what is fair? Actually, before I forget, I'm just going to copy a link. I found this afternoon. This was budget surpluses aplenty, but how much is reasonable? And it's a really good article. It talks about, actually, there's a similar municipality in New York that has about our amount of revenues with a similar amount in reserves. And it just talks about state law permits school districts, this is New York, to retain a surplus of no more than 4% in their budgets. Local governments are not subject to such constraints. Like Ms. Denham said, there's no rules. So
New York
what
tax
is our rule?
New York tax structure is totally different than Pennsylvania.
Again, but why?
Pennsylvania is almost unique in the whole United States, I can tell you that. Rather
Okay.
than take up time here,
No,
I'll sit down and discuss it with
I
you.
would love to. When?
Whenever I can get a chance with Sheila.
Okay. Then I'll just go. I jotted down a few notes. I thought I was going to just get somewhere with that other stuff about maybe having some actual policies. But let's see. Could you just confirm, you mentioned the insurance is a high deductible. Are we reimbursing the employees for their deductibles?
Not at all.
Okay, I know.
We don't have HSA or anything.
Okay.
It's out of their money.
So I think it would be nice for the November budget, when you do line by line, to actually break down the salary increase, like what is the salary increase, and then also show the request for the new positions, what that salary line is.
Sure.
I think that should be broken down that way. Major capital expenditures. Oh, the new cars.
And we discussed this at length at the last meeting, but yeah. We're not buying Ford Edges. They're a step above the scale, I think. Don't hold enough stuff.
Some municipalities offer a monthly car allowance instead of a car. And in doing that,
Stipend?
yes, a stipend,
Okay.
say $400 a month, and perhaps we should do a cost analysis on maybe if the township engineer needs a vehicle, maybe consider a $400 a month car allowance, because that saves the township on insurance costs for the car, for gasoline costs for the car, for
$400
wear and
doesn't
tear.
cover anything. You'd have to raise that to $700 to $800 a month.
Well, do a cost-benefit analysis. It might be better to do it that way, because then we're relieving ourselves of the liability. You know, I don't.
Our Explorers cost $26,000, and we would have that paid off in 2 years. No, I don't think that would.
Okay.
But I'm not.
How do we control the usage of the gasoline tanks?
Key fob system that's linked to the car. And they're on security cameras 24 hours a day. There's a police department right there. There's no way for someone to pump gas without. Are you making an accusation?
No. I mean, it's our
code
you
system.
Mr. Webb.
Electronic code system.
Yeah, I mean.
They can tie it back to the use.
To the vehicle.
Okay.
It's not a.
It's a, you know, it's a control. Tuition, what's the policy on tuition?
24, correct me if I'm wrong, $24,000 a year lifetime, $8,000 I'm sorry, 24,000 lifetime, $8,000 a year max. So however you spend it, you have to pass the class, obviously.
Is there a policy if the employee doesn't stay with us past a certain amount of time, they would have to reimburse
We
them?
would get sued in a heartbeat. That's most likely a violation of federal law.
It was discussed, but it was turned out to be infeasible
Yeah.
legally. There are increments in which you get reimbursed. So if you get a B, you get 80% of the cost of the tuition. If you get a C, you get 60% of the cost of the tuition. If you fail, you obviously get nothing.
Conferences and training, you know, I ask about this every year. And when I ask a lot of these questions, just so the chief knows, I'm not including his department in all of this stuff.
And why not? They're part of the township.
Well, because I think he has a good, I think he has a good control of it.
The training budget. Why not ask that question?
Well, all right, conferences.
Sure. I'm not going to be specific.
Okay, so can we break it down into conferences and training in the budget?
It is broken down. It's by department in the line item budget. Every year. Every year. Every department budget has their own number.
Training another line?
Yeah, because conferences are, you know.
They're training. They're just a group of training put together in one time frame, as opposed to one.
Whether it's a day-long seminar or a 2-day conference.
All right.
They're all
So say like a lot of conferences, we could get through PSATs and you could go to Harrisburg or somewhere. Okay.
For the training we need.
So how, does the board have a policy on how many flights or how far the employees can go to conferences?
We know where the conferences are. We don't. And we budget for them every year by conference. We don't just throw a line item number in there. Everybody submits their requests and they're looked at and then approved.
Yes, Chief.
With regard to my department, I mean, every training I go to, we get a training certificate that comes back.
Absolutely.
And it's my discretion as to what training they go to and what conference they go to. So obviously they submit their request. If it's valuable to the agency, to the officer, then that's given some serious weight.
Absolutely.
Right.
As far as the police department goes, and I've said this in my budget meetings, there's 3 things that happen with the police department if you don't train. You get hurt, you get killed, or you end up in federal court.
Yep.
Right, and
So
that's
the
fine.
cost of and that could be with any other department in this, in the township. They can get hurt if they're not properly trained. They can die if they're not properly trained. And if they do something wrong, they can end up being sued by whomever.
The
So-
laws are updated all the time.
So-
EPA mandates are updated, sewer system stuff's updated, new equipment is, coming out.
We're professional, trained ones.
So to provide a better service to the residents, the employees and staff need to be trained.
Absolutely.
Which is really no different than what is happening in every other sector of our society.
Absolutely.
So at my last few companies, we had annual conferences, quarterly conferences, daily conferences, depending on what was local, things that we could get access to. Right, probably take advantage of that much more frequently than the annual conference. But it was still, not only was it an educational experience, but it was a development responsibility in terms of making connections who can be resources to you in your job, irrespective of where they come from. And as you learn from the experience that Casey and the staff had with the pipeline training, there's only one place in the country you're supposed to go to get this type of training.
Absolutely.
And we luckily were able to subsidize it with the grant that we received.
Absolutely.
But had we not had that grant, and we as a township felt that that was a priority for us, I wouldn't have blinked an eye to say you can't go because it's gonna cost $4,000 in transportation.
Instead of just a line item that says conferences and training, I, as a citizen, would like to see what destinations and conferences are in the budget for 2019.
I don't understand the relevance of knowing that type of information. The most important thing you should want to know about is what the learning is going to be. It has nothing to do with how far away it is.
Well, that's what the
People have to go to where
point
they have to go to get the training.
As a tax-paying citizen, I think there should be a line item where employees.
Thank you for your comment.
That's not
Thank
all
you
that
for your
is.
comment.
Everything's within reason. Let's remember that a lot of times these conferences aren't announcing where they're going to be.
Oh,
And they have to do their budgets at a certain time. So, I mean, we can always have that discussion as to what training's reasonable, what's not reasonable. And that's something I welcome you to ask about. But the overall scenario of being able just to block out what you just said, I don't think that's going to be possible in every incident.
how do you know that to ask for a 20% increase or whatever it is, if you don't even know where you're going at?
Well, that's a good question, except for what they do is look at different parameters. If we have a threat, like we have the school shooter threat, it's something that's a recent phenomenon, all of a sudden you're like, you know what, we really got to get this training. Or we have a community relations training because we have some issues with the, not this department, thank God, but, some other police department. And, they have to have some sort of a sensitivity training or something. That came out of the blue, no one knows. Guess what? They have it in San Francisco. It's the only show in town. Well, what are you going to do? I mean, you got to, I think that's.
I personally think you're tying the hands of the head of the agency or the department when you restrict us a year in advance. Because I don't know what conferences may come across my desk in April that is scheduled after September, and I think that's a wonderful trend.
Okay, but then I believe in other municipalities I've seen before the employee goes somewhere that the board would say, okay, X department head would like to register for this conference in Las Vegas, and then the board would have to approve that.
Well, that's because the authority of this board has been delegated to Mr. Lalonde as township manager. We have placed our trust in him to make the decisions and to allow his department heads to make those decisions. We do not micromanage.
Well, to Mary's point and to the chief's point, the chief's correct. That's the way every department runs, is that it goes through the department heads. If the department heads aren't doing their job, then that's a whole nother problem. But I believe what Mary said is correct. It runs through the department heads, and all the department heads are responsible for making sure the training is relevant and of value to West Goshen.
And again, this is exactly what happens in corporate America, basically every other organization I've ever been affiliated with, that as the executives, as the board, as the overseers of the business. Okay, this is a business. We're running a business here. We do not get involved with telling the president of the company, in this case our township manager, what he or she or any of his subordinates are required to do. They make those decisions. He evaluates them. There's a process here. This is a hierarchy. This is a organizational structure that starts with people who may know nothing when they join, who know a lot when they move on. In this township, we have highly skilled people who, after 8-9 months of spending time with them, spend pretty much every waking moment that I can tell worrying and thinking about how they're going to get the most out of the dollars that we're going to be able to bestow upon them this year. And they make strategic decisions and evaluations, some of whom have been willing to even show you the information that they use to come up with their decisions. And so you asking for the place where someone's going to go to get trained is going down to the level of them questioning one of the department heads. And in this situation, if that ever becomes an issue, then it will rise to our attention to address performance issues and or people who are not following policies that have been directed by the township manager and the department heads. It's not our purview to worry about what conferences people are going to. In terms of understanding what they're doing, we trust in them. They are the experts in their department, okay? Like, no one else in this room is an expert on their departments except for the people who work there. So we do our homework, we check things out, we decide if we think we have a concern, we raise it up, we go into the details, we come back, we decide, okay, we understand what's going on. So I hope you consider that each time you ask us questions about the items on the budget that you think may be perhaps subject to misuse.
No, I
Consider that there's a lot of decision-making and a lot of talent and a lot of appropriate integrity in how this township is run. And that's the last thing I'm going to say about it. You have something else to say, but Mr.
You know, I feel like, I come here just as a citizen concerned about tax dollars. That's all it's ever been. And every month, you just attack me for being here. I stood a year ago in front of the Government Services Center with a sandwich board over my neck for you two women. And honestly, it's been a disappointment. And I thought tonight was going to be the difference, because once we were going to be able to just discuss, like, I'm not attacking or questioning them. This is simple concern for taxpayer dollars.
But you are when you ask them to tell you what conferences and how many
Transparency. Well, why? Because some municipalities have policies that if you have to go west of the Mississippi, you don't go. There are conferences east of the Mississippi.
Marcia, I don't blame you or hold it against you for asking those questions. I think I slightly disagree with what you said. I don't think it's irrelevant. I think it's a learning curve. We're all learning here. Each time we have a budget, we're learning something new.
Right.
So you asking those questions, for me at least personally, is not offending. I welcome them. I still learn from your questions. I don't necessarily agree with what you're proposing. And I think that's
policies. Just make a policy. Let's have a policy.
We have a policy. There is a policy. It's not as tight as you want it. For example, the general fund policy, the bare minimum requirements allow us to do certain things. You're asking for above and beyond. Is that wrong that you're asking for that? No. Is that something that we'll agree with necessarily? Well, it doesn't seem like it, at least in that instance. So I personally don't mind you asking those questions, but I do, to Robin's point, want to point out that when we get into the minutia of that, there has to be a certain level of trust and delegation. Now, every board member here works hard, but we cannot look over the shoulders of each and every employee. There is a certain amount of trust that we have in our employees, and they do a good job. So if something happens that's wrong, we'll address that. And you're more than welcome to ask your questions or look into those sort of things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to agree on everything. So I just want you to keep that in mind. And what I would appreciate, the budget we have in front of us has some hard expenditures, some identifiable things that people are asking for. We can have an open and honest debate as to whether or not we should extend on that. But right now, to go into policy questions, though, maybe that's a better time in the future. Because
I thought the future was with this new board.
Well, I hope that it is. I think it is. I just think that right now, if you look at the list we have in front of us, we've got our homework, and we don't have much time till the end of the year. So I don't mind you taking a look at all of these items, which is a lot of them to keep anybody busy, and you can ask any questions you have about that. Going into next year, I mean, now, at this juncture, to change policy for the budget during budget season, it's not good. It's just, it's not going to work. We don't have the time at this point to address those possible changes. Like, okay, every year we're just going to transfer a set amount to the capital reserve fund. That's what we're proposing. Maybe that's not a bad idea, but I got to tell you right now, we still got most of this budget to go through, and we've got decisions to make. So I'd rather have that conversation further step later. It's not a bad question. You have every right as a citizen to come in here and ask these questions. I might not agree with you as the the old saying says, but I guide and defend your right to ask those questions. But right at this point, I'm going to ask, because it's way past 3 minutes, but this is a different type of meeting. Why don't we talk about what's on the sheet of paper? Because I'm very interested specifically in some particular expenditures that I'd like to discuss. Anything else?
Can I ask, are there 2 board members that are on a budget committee with department heads that meet for budget meetings?
Yes.
We don't
Okay.
necessarily call it a budget committee, it's just a budget
Budget
group.
meeting, okay.
Excuse me, Marty, can I just say something? real
Sure.
quick? Just because you go for it doesn't mean it costs more. And I think what the policy should be is get the training you need and do what you need to do. And allow Casey to make these decisions and just instruct Casey, just be reasonable about what it costs. If you have to go, go. It doesn't mean it's going to cost more if it's if it's far away. And in fact, sometimes it costs more to go regional to get to far.
That's fine. I just know we spend a lot compared to other municipalities, that's all.
Well,
So,
But I think that goes to also, I hate to interrupt Dr. I'm sorry, but that goes to also the quality of the employees we have, the quality of the law enforcement we have. We have law enforcement that are continually accepted into the FBI Academy.
Are they rated in the top 25 places to live in the country?
Right. We have the fire department, these are volunteers, and they're faced with a lot of stresses financially and otherwise, and we have this pipeline coming through. Heck yeah, we're going to train them on that pipeline. That might mean the difference between people living and dying. So, I mean, there's a certain standard that we have here that we have to keep mindful of. And we don't want to damage that standard, and sometimes that means sacrifices. But, you know, like I said, I mean, you know, let's talk about if we need that extra mower.
right.
Let's not talk about if we need to send our police officers to certain training that's going to keep our kids safe.
Yeah. All right, I get it. All right, so,
So I'm going to ask you to wrap it up soon.
all right, budget committee, can the public be in attendance at a budget? But see, you don't allow me to come up here and discuss things if I were able to come to these budget
You've been
meetings.
on since 8:25. You've been speaking for almost 40 minutes.
Yeah,
And the idea of not denying you a single question.
I took into account, we don't have many people here, so I gave
Right.
you multiple 3 minutes.
Well, I
Denied you
know,
a single question or
I know. Our old Republican board used to allow us just to ask questions from here, and then we wouldn't have to scribble notes and then get lost. And we all would have learned if we would have been allowed to just ask what certain things meant or ask questions.
It has been
So,
quite some time, Margie, I mean, like I said.
yeah. And another reason we need how about a forensic audit? I've been asking that for years.
For what purpose?
Okay. Well,
Has
because
someone been convicted of a crime who's been fired from here, Margie? Are you going to make an accusation against me again for the thousands? I'm sorry. I'm done. Thank you.
Do you have any more comments?
you guys, you're such. So we have a West Goshen Township auditor. He serves as the fiscal watchdog for West Goshen Township, ensuring transparent and accurate financial operations. So I'm an equal opportunity offender, I guess. So truth decay. So, and I did say to this very nice young man that if he used that position as auditor on any future publicity for his run for office, that I would be, disappointed in that. So we have auditors that claim to be fiscal watchdogs. We don't have any. I know we pay an auditor so many thousands of dollars a year, but they just audit the numbers that we pass on to the state. So, I do have complete and total faith in the department heads sitting out there. I know they work hard. I can't say that about the gentleman to my right.
Margie, please do not.
Thank you, Margie, for your comments. Next, Dr. White, I believe you had, you're all done.
You're all done? All
Always
right.
done.
Any other comments?
Any other comments from yours? Now, Marty, I just want to say something. I've known Casey now for a couple of years. Casey and I don't always agree on everything, but Casey's hardworking, and he's never given me a reason, from what I've dealt with him, to question his integrity. So attacking people and their integrity and everything is going to be counterproductive. I welcome your comments. I welcome your insights. Some of your suggestions, believe it or not, think hard, have actually been taken up by this board. That's something that's a great give and take. I just ask for mutual respect. I don't want to go down that path again where we're just throwing insults back and forth. It's counterproductive. Just let's keep that in mind, okay, please. All right. Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Any other questions from the department heads, staff? Any other questions?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Our next meeting is Monday, November 26th.
Monday, November 26th is our next meeting. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I just made it.
Thank you. Second from Ed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks, for coming out.